Bubba Scrubba, the scripted monologue, Volume 2, Episode 3. Marker. Good afternoon, everybody. It's Monday. Hope everybody's off to a good start to their week. It's imperative to get a good start to carry you through to Friday because everybody's working towards the weekend. For us unemployed, one day kind of flows into the next. I'm proud of myself for even knowing what day of the week it is in that regard. This morning I woke up and read an interesting article, the premise of which was basically role reversal in American politics, American political parties. And I thought the argument was interesting and germane to today's political debate. So this is what today's video is about. I call it the Great Societal Role Reversal. For most Americans who are 30 and older, politics feels like a funhouse mirror, where traditional ideological labels are either distorted or no longer apply entirely. This role reversal is also happening at scale between our government and megacorporations, most of which have become too big to fail. But make no mistake, this has been a slow drift, and which has contributed to the following changes happening right under our noses. Modern conservatism has detached itself from the Republican Party entirely, and which is a byproduct of Donald Trump's MAGA movement. The GOP has rebranded itself into a populist counterculture, more interested in disruption than preservation. Instead of defending institutions, they're torching them for relevance. It's rebellion as a political strategy, and the base loves it because it feels like payback for decades of cultural marginalization. Meanwhile, the Democrats have quietly become the new conservatives. They're the ones defending institution norms and the status quo, even while those institutions have started to buckle under their own weight. It's a strange inversion. The boomer party of revolution is now the party of maintenance. All the while, they're fighting a culture war against Trump, MAGA, and their own political relevance. Meanwhile, the new left isn't in Congress anymore. It's in Silicon Valley. Tech oligarchs have become the cultural engineers of modern life, shaping behavior through platforms, algorithms, and digital infrastructure. They now control the tools we use to work, communicate, shop, and even think. And with AI accelerating at pace, they're positioning themselves to automate not just labor, but creativity, judgment, and even human intuition. Every swipe, click, and purchase is another data point fed into a machine that decides what you see next. It's not propaganda in the old sense, it's behavioral engineering at industrial scale. The new left doesn't need marches or manifestos. Rather, all they need is to control the hearts and minds of the next generation, in which they have succeeded in doing with frightening efficiency. We have now come to a place where the only entity capable of checking this power is the federal government, the same entity which has been compromised by the greed of the current political class. Politicians aren't shaping the machine is shaping them. Trump's fundraising ecosystem is the most visible example, with massive PAC donations from tech billionaires masquerading as legalized patronage, the benefits of which are well documented across regulatory and policy decisions. Because of this, the government is the one institution Americans now trust the least. People know the game is rigged in favor of the Epstein class. However, the politicians are the only people standing between our society and total algorithmic capture by Skynet. But the deeper, more opaque connections are with the big AI giants, companies like OpenAI, Anthropic, and Google DeepMind. These firms are building systems that will mediate everything from national security to personal identity. The public sees the chatbots and novelty features. What they don't see is the political leverage that comes from controlling the next layer of human decision-making. There are questions nobody in power seems eager to answer. Who audits these models? Who sets the guardrails? Who decides what information gets amplified or buried? And most importantly, what happens when the politicians start depending on these systems to govern? That's the moment when the line between elected and algorithmic authority disappears entirely. We're heading toward a collision between a tech sector that doesn't want to slow down and a government that can't keep up. One side is sprinting toward a future it alone gets to define, while the other drowns in bureaucracy. If the government tries to regulate too late, it will look like panic. If it doesn't regulate at all, it hands the keys of society to unelected engineers and executives. American society may be saved or destroyed by the very institutions people trust the least. And the scariest part is that the real power players aren't the politicians, they're the ones writing the code. The political role reversal is just the surface. The deeper story is who gets to shape the future, the voters and the governments they elect, or the algorithms. The thing that resonated with me the most was the idea that the Republicans and the Democrats have switched roles. Yeah, the Democrats are really now conservative. They're the conservative party of this country because they're the ones that are interested in defending, our the governmental norms and the institutions that we rely on, while the Republicans, basically under the guidance of Donald Trump, and I guess you could say by extension Elon Musk, are the ones trying to gut the Social Security net programs, the food stamps, the disability. I know Trump himself would never say he wants to touch Social Security and Medicare because he knows that that is political suicide and his coalition depends on that to survive. But the other Republican politicians, specifically guys like, I'm looking at you, Mike Johnson and Rick Scott, billionaire Rick Scott, who, why would he ever give a shit about, if people lose their Medicare or their Social Security? They're still trying to gut these programs. And it's crazy that this is where we've come, in society, that, these parties are almost unrecognizable. But the bigger thing to me, the bigger issue is really these mega corporations. Once upon a time, I guess, we could look at, there's a few different sectors that really kind of run the whole show. Obviously, one is the tech sector. And the thing that's the most scary is that the tech sector is now basically kind of co-running the government with the elected politicians. They had a picture of the G7 summit last week, and they had this big round table with all of the heads of state sitting there, and sitting there side by side are all of these big tech CEOs, and it's like these people now are exerting a level of control and influence over government spending, over society in general, that cannot be quantified until somewhere way down the line. And unfortunately, it might be too late by then. But it's very evident that now that Elon Musk is a trillionaire, that how do you put this? On one hand, yes, this is just capitalism in its most pure form to a certain degree, although a lot of these companies have been propped up, especially Elon Musk, especially companies like SpaceX have been propped up by government spending, i.e., the taxpayer money, our money. But it is becoming very evident that these companies are wielding an power that was unimaginable even back in the days of Rockefeller, Carnegie, the Vanderbilts, etc. But it's not just the tech sector; it's also the defense contractors. I mean, the military-industrial complex has gotten to a point. Eisenhower gave a famous speech at the end of his second term, which is ironic considering the fact that Eisenhower was a military man, of course, and he warned against the explosion of the military-industrial complex and the integration of these two uh, organizations. And he was right. He was right. We have become a country that relies very heavily on the defense sector, defense spending, not just for GDP. I mean, every state is touched by defense spending, so it's not as easy as just saying, "Oh, we need to cut the defense budget." Sadly, the one thing that's a constant is that nobody trusts the government anymore, and it's not as if that this was a phenomenon which was intrinsic to Donald Trump, but I will say that he has helped to amplify the idea that you can't trust the government, you can't trust what they're doing, and we definitely cannot count on them to keep the regular American, the common salt of the earth person's best interests at heart. They've been corrupted too much by the political machine, money, kickbacks, fundraising, lobbying. I mean, money is the political lifeblood of our, current governmental system. And it's sad because what's going to happen is that these tech companies are just giving so much money to the government that they're looking the other way and letting them set the agenda, and nobody really even knows what the next step is once this agentic AI, once it becomes self-aware. Is it going to be like Skynet? I mean, I hate to say it, but this is where um, you know uh, the great sci-fi authors of our time were prescient. They weren't, this wasn't, they were thinking in terms of what was going to happen potentially in hundreds of years or thousands of years. But it's like crazy that more often than not, these things come true. So, like, the Terminator is something that's probably an eventual outcome, you know. Meanwhile, think about movies like, there was an old movie from whatever, 50 years ago called Rollerball, started James Caan. And that's kind of like where we're at in society, where the government is not in control. The world is controlled by these huge mega corporations, and they keep the masses pacified with blood sport. And that was the titular name of the movie, Rollerball. But it's no different than whatever pro sports that you watch, or collegiate sports that you watch, or MMA, or whatever it is, combat sports. uh, Between that and being in our digital lives on our phone, they found a very efficient way to keep us occupied, to keep us divided, and to keep us basically asleep to what's really going on in society. So hopefully there is a way back from the brink. I'm not holding out hope that we're going to have some kind of transformative politician run for POTUS and be able to put the brakes on all this and undo all this damage. But um, there's an old adage, that's why they play the game, right? So the sun also rises. We'll try to maintain that hope for the future, and we'll say a prayer. We'll say a prayer for our friends. We'll put that for our family, for our neighbors, for the people of this country, and the good people of the planet Earth. And until the next video, take care now. Bye bye then.